All righty. Okay, this is not ESPN's 30 for 30. I'm going to fix my chair here. But this is my 98 for 98. The 98 seasons in the history of the New York Football Giants. And I'm going to try to get it done in 98 days. That's probably not going to happen, but I am going to get it done before the beginning of the season, which starts September 10th against those Dallas Cowboys. And we're in the second season of the Jim Fossil era. 1998, the 74th season in the history of the New York Giants, 74th season in the history of the Giants, 79th season in the history of the NFL, because the Giants started in 1925, NFL started in 1920, so the Giants are 5 years younger than the NFL is. But I mean, that 1998 season didn't have a losing season. Didn't have a winning season either. So they were 8-8, which was a shame because they only missed the playoffs by one game. But they had a rally toward the end just to get to that 500 record. So, but that also goes to show you, he had some, I don't want to say, so I don't want to say special powers, but I mean, he was able to rally his troops at times. There was, he made a guarantee. He said, we're all in, there wasn't for the 1998 season, but he said, this team's a playoff team. I got my chips all, pushing all my chips into the middle of the table. This team's making the playoffs. If you're in, you're in. If you're not, get out. So he was a what do you want to say, gambling man. He used to put his money where his mouth was and all that stuff and everything. But so they had a rally toward the end of the season just to be 8-8. But it's a shame because they only missed the playoffs by one game. During Jim Fossil's 7 seasons with the Giants, he had 3 winning seasons, 3 losing seasons, and 1, 8-8 season. So this was the 8-8 season. It was a little, help was on the way, but it just became very apparent that they needed a quarterback. And was it Mike Cherry? I think his last name's Cherry. Cherry, baby, Cherry. Let's see. Was it Mike? Yes, it was. Okay, but the that was one of their quarterbacks, Mike Cherry. Remember him? Glad you do, because I don't. But the Danny Canal, Kent Graham, Dave Brown, Mike Cherry era of quarterbacking needed to go bye-bye. They're starting to accumulate some better talent. They had Amani Toomer on the team. They did draft Ike Hilliard in 1997. They also got Tiki Barber as well. So they started getting some talent there. They weren't the cupboard was not overflowing with talent, but there was some talent there. But the quarterback play, I mean, honestly, you could really say Canal, Graham, and Dave Brown. You could look at them and just say, not bad backups. Honestly, not bad. Dave Brown, Dave Brown, I think came in 1992, and I think he was still 2001. So like a 10-year career, but that's a backup. If you had to bring him in, he was a smart quarterback from Duke. Intelligent and all that. He just was not somebody who was going to lead you to a Super Bowl. But Kent Graham. We had a great game this not this year, but in 1998. The one game where they wound up beating the undefeated. We'll go over this. This is one of those games that they rallied toward the end of the season. The Giants were 5-8, and they said, "Well, we'll go over this a little more in depth and detail and all." And the Broncos came into town at 13-0, and Kent Graham, led the Giants. He beat the 13-0 Denver Broncos. The Broncos were a very good team that year. They won back-to-back Super Bowls after 97 and 98. But Kent Graham, we were at home, but he led the Giants. to an upset victory. I mean, they were 5-8. The Broncos were 13-0. Well, let's see. Does it have it? That should have the spread here. What was the spread? Yeah. Yeah. Broncos on the road were favored by 13 points. Okay. So, this is it was a very exciting game, especially because the Giants won. But I mean, they won in the final minute and all of that and everything. I mean, so it was just an incredible game. But I mean, I said this just goes to show you kind of like what Fossil was able to do. We were 5-8. We're out of it. No reason. Nobody expects us to win an undefeated team and all and everything. The Giants beat them, and then the Giants won their final 2 games to finish 8-8. So, just goes to show you, right? But even the preseason was not very good for the Giants. They won their first game. They played Saturday, August 8th against the Cincinnati Bengals at home, and the Giants won 24-17. But that would be their only win in preseason. Then Friday, August 14th, they would play the Jacksonville Jaguars and Tom Coughlin, right, in Jacksonville, and they would lose 24-10. Following week, they were the away team against the Jets. They played Thursday, August 20th at, obviously in Giants Stadium. They lost 27-23. Then the final game they played was Friday, August 28th. They played at Giants Stadium, and they lost 14-6. Okay, so their preseason was 1-3. Nothing super special there, all right? But let's see here. Let's go to the draft. Now, something really interesting happened here. Something happened a long way to the draft. I'm going to point it out. Happened in the 3rd round. Something you don't usually see very often I'm sure it's probably happened maybe somewhere along the line before. I'm not going to go back and look at it or nothing like that, but just something very, very interesting. Now, this was also the first year George Young was no longer the Giants general manager. Ernie Accorsi was the Giants general manager. So Ernie Accorsi's, I guess, first official draft. So, I mean, he did not do very good. The first couple picks, the first pick was pretty good, right? The second pick wasn't too bad, but then after that, he had 4 more picks. He had a pick in the 3rd round, the 5th round, the 6th round, the 7th round, but they were not very good. So Ernie hit it out of the park with like Eli Manning in 2004, but this draft here was not one of his better ones, right? However, his first pick, was Sean Williams from UCLA, defensive back from UCLA. Now, he had a nice long career. He had played 9 seasons in the NFL. They weren't all with the Giants. Okay, his final season was in Carolina, but he played. Looks like he played probably cornerback, free safety, strong safety for the Giants. Very versatile. He played from 1998 to 2005 for the Giants. He played 8 seasons with the Giants. So a nice, solid pick, first round pick. He was never. Let's see. Now, he was never selected to a Pro Bowl, an All Pro, or nothing like that. But he was a solid pick. Okay, 8-year career. Not too bad. What did he have in his 8-year with the Giants? He had 13 interceptions, nothing. He had 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. Let's see here. So he had 418 tackles, 22 tackles for loss. Did he have any sacks? Yeah, he had 4.5 sacks for the Giants. I mean, just a solid pick. Nothing crazily awesome, but a solid pick for the Giants. Then their 2nd round pick. Then they wound up taking Joe Jurevicius from Penn State. Now, he had a 10-year career in the NFL. However, once it was not all with the New York Giants. As a matter of fact, only his first 4 seasons were with the Giants. His 4th season, he did well. He had 51 receptions, which was in 2001. For 706 yards, he averaged 13.8 yards a reception. And then I guess the Giants didn't want to re-signing him, but it wound up working out really well for him because the following year, Joe Jurevicius went to Tampa Bay where they won the Super Bowl. And I'll remember he had I think it was a touchdown reception against the Eagles at the Vet in the championship game, the NFC championship game. It was the final game ever played at the Vet. and it was I believe it was a touchdown reception he had against the Eagles. Let's see here, 2002. Tampa Bay. Let's go to the championship game against the Eagles. And let's see. What was it? What did he do? Maybe he didn't. I know he had a long reception now. Maybe he had a reception and he got knocked out of the bounds or something like that. But he had a good game for him. What did he have here? Joe Juravicious. Oh, that's what it was. Okay. He didn't have such a good game. My bad. But Joe Juravicious in the championship game, he had one reception for 71 yards. They threw the ball his way 5 times, only caught one pass. But, I mean, they had Keyshawn Johnson, Keenan McCardle, Ricky Dudley, Carl Williams, Ken Dilger. Michael Pittman caught 5 passes out of the backfield. So, but Joe Juravicious caught one pass for 71 yards. I forgot what, but it set up a score for him. I don't remember which score it was, but it was wound up being a big play in that game. I always remember Joe Juravicious for that because I couldn't stand the Eagles. Absolutely despised the Eagles. So for him to make that reception in the championship game was wound up being huge. But I mean, it was kind of like Ed McCaffrey. The Giants drafted Ed McCaffrey, who wound up being a decent receiver. The Giants had him for a few years, and they let him go, never re-signed him, I guess. And he had a nice lengthy career with other teams. Notably, I know he played with the Broncos as well too. But so in their second round pick, Joe Juravicious. Not an unbelievably fantastic pick for a second round selection. Maybe he had a 10-year career, but unfortunately it was only with the 4 years of it was with the Giants. So then after that, then this is where it got a little interesting here. In the third round, all right. Where are we at? There we go. In the third round, the ninth pick in the third round. Actually was the Cowboys. They traded the ninth pick in the third round. The Cowboys traded it to the Eagles, who then traded it to the Giants. So you had the ninth pick in the third round was the Cowboys, went to the Eagles and went to the Giants. So you had 3 teams from the NFC East had a third round pick. Oh, had the same pick. So that's something you don't usually see very often. I mean, usually it's kind of a little odd, for somebody the Giants jumped up like 15 spots. Okay, so I mean, it just goes to show you how kind of a bad pick this one was for the Giants. The Giants jumped up 15 spots in the third round to trade wound up being with the Eagles. And it was very similar to what the Giants did this season when they traded up. They jumped up with the trade with the Rams in the third round. This year, I think the Giants jumped up in a 2023 draft, like 16 or 17 spots to trade with the Rams in the third round. The Giants had to trade away their third and fourth round pick to the Rams this season to get Jalin Hyatt. Well, it was the same thing here. The Giants jumped up 15 spots to trade with the Eagles, and they had to give the Eagles their third and fourth round picks. So the Giants didn't have a fourth round selection because they gave it to the Eagles. So, but it was very similar to what it was this year. The Giants jumped up 17 spots, traded away their third and fourth round pick. Here they jumped up 15 spots to trade away their third and fourth round pick. But when you jump up that high, I mean, and it was the same thing. The Giants jumped up to draft a wide receiver as well in 1998. This draft here, but when you jumping up 15 spots, and it just goes, it's just weird. It's like they're jumping up to make their team better in the NFC East, and the Eagles are like, oh, okay, all right, there you go. we'll trade with you. So. But when you jump up that high, you got to make sure that the guy is going to be good. And they drafted Brian Alford from Purdue, and he had 2 catches in his whole career. He played in 2 seasons. He had 1 catch in 1998 and he had one catch in 1999, and his career was over. So the Giants jumped up 15 spots, traded away their third-round pick and their fourth-round pick to draft a wide receiver who in his NFL career would have two catches. One catch in 98, one catch in 99, and his career was over. The ball was thrown his way 11 times. He played a grand total of 4 games in those 2 seasons. The ball was thrown his way 11 times. He had 2 catches for 18 yards. That's the third-round selection. 2 catches, 18 yards. The one bright spot in all of it was his touchdown reception percentage was astronomical because he caught 2 passes, one of them went for touchdown. So basically half of his catches went for touchdown. So, but other than that, an absolute trash. You give up 2 picks for a guy who is trash. Absolutely horrible pick. Horrible, horrible, horrible. So I said, so then the Giants traded away their 4th-round selection to the Eagles so that they could jump up that high to take this absolute garbage pick, which was Brian Alford from Purdue. So the next pick the Giants had was in the 5th round. They took Toby Miles, a tackle from Jackson State. He played from 1999 to 2001. Once again, not a very good pick. The Giants, he played 1 season for the Giants. 1999. So he didn't even play in the 98 season with the Giants. He played 1999 for the Giants, played in 8 games, and that was it. Then he didn't play in 2000. And he came back in 2001, and he played for Cleveland, and then he played for Oakland, and his career was over. So he wound up playing, the 5th-round selection, wound up playing a grand total of 11 games. 8 of them were with the Giants, and then he played a grand total of 11 games, and his career was over. So once again, we're talking a 5th-round pick too, okay? And back then, you're going back to 98, going back 25 years ago, a lot of times the 5th-round selections weren't home runs, okay? Not like they kind of could be like nowadays, right? How we took Eric Gray, who could have a nice little lengthy career, or maybe Trey Hawkins we took in the 6th round, who looks like might be an absolute steal. Okay, well, back then in the day, you take somebody like a Toby Miles in the 5th round, then he winds up being a bust, and that's what happened. Their 6th-round pick was a bust because they took Todd Pollock, a tight end from Boston College, and he never made it in the pros. Oh boy! Then their final pick was in the 7th round. They took Ben Frick or Ben Fricky, Fricke. So I'm not sure if it's Fricky or Frick, but he's a center from Houston. And he never played for the Giants. He played 3 seasons in the NFL. They were all with the Cowboys. He played actually 2 seasons at guard with them. 1 was at center. But his story here, Fricky was selected by the Giants in the 7th round, 213th overall, the 1998 NFL draft, after dropping because he was considered undersized by his position. He was 6 foot tall, 280 pounds. I guess maybe a little undersized, but I mean, we're going back 25 years ago. So I guess he probably could have been maybe a little bit taller. That might have helped, but at 280 pounds was not, I guess maybe 290 to 300 would have been acceptable. But anyway, so the Giants drafted him in 1998. However, he was waived by the Giants on August 23rd of 1998. 1999, he played with the Amsterdam Admirals. And then in 2000, in 1999, he was selected by the Amsterdam Admirals in the 11th round of the Europe draft. He was a starter at center, helping running back David Thompson finish 4th in the league with 503 rushing yards. So I guess that same season, then later on that season, he wound up playing with the Cowboys. So he played from 1999 to 2001 with the Cowboys. Then in 2002, he latched on with the 49ers, but he was released on August 8th, and he never played ever again. So, I mean, it was a 7th-round pick, was nothing super special, obviously. And once again, he never even played for the Giants. So they waived him before the beginning of the season. So it is what it is. But I mean, so Ernie Corsi's first draft overall was not very good. He could have certainly done better, without question. But it is what it is. I mean, he would do better as time would go by. But let's see what the 1998 Wikipedia has to say about the Giants here, shall we? 1998 New York Giants season was the team's 74th season in the National Football League. The team failed to improve upon their previous season's output of 10-5-1, winning only 8 games and missing the playoffs. It's a shame because they missed the playoffs by 1 game. They missed the playoffs. The Cardinals were 9-7. They made the playoffs, and the Giants were 8-8. So the Giants missed by 1 game. One of their wins, however, came against the defending Super Bowl champion Denver Broncos in Week 15, trailing by 3 points late in the fourth quarter. Amani Toomer caught a deep touchdown pass from Kent Graham to give them a 2016 lead, which held when the defense stopped the Broncos on their final drive. The Broncos had not lost a game since Week 16 of the previous season, so almost a whole year since they lost the game. And of course, because they hadn't lost the game since Week 16 of the previous season, because having won their last regular season game, the 3 playoff games, which was the Super Bowl, and their first 13 games of the 1998 season, entering the matchup with the Giants. So, I mean, they were a very, very good team. As I said, this was John Elway's final season, and the Super Bowl after the 1998 season was John Elway's final game ever. He won the Super Bowl, hopped up on a horse, and just rode off into the sunset. A champion, right? I was very happy for him. Very, very happy for him. So let's see. So I mean, as I said, the Giant, what just became once again just apparent was, they needed a quarterback, and Ernie Corsi was taking care of that. I mean, and, the following season in '99, we got Kerry Collins, and then after Kerry Collins was with the Giants until 2003. Then obviously in 2004, we got not only Kurt Warner, but we had Eli Manning. Kurt Warner's a Hall of Famer. And then of course we got Eli Manning, who should be a future Hall of Famer as well. So, so Ernie, of course, he did take care of, he took care of some business here. So we got Kerry Collins, who not only took the Giants to a Super Bowl, but a championship game, but he also took the Carolina Panthers to a championship game as well, too. They lost to the Packers, but he was a very good team. Oh, hold on. Up. Sorry. My dog wants to get underneath here. he's too much. All right, Rainey? All right. Okay, my dog's good now. All right. So, I mean, the Giants, it was just, the defense was not bad. The points against, they only gave up 19 points a game, which was 8th in the whole league, with a very bad offense. That just goes to show you how good their defense was. I mean, because if their offense was better, the offense would be on the field more, scoring more points and all that stuff. The defense would be on the sideline drinking Kool-Aid, giving up less points. But so the offense only scored 17.9 points per game, which was 23rd in the league. So it just became very apparent that they needed better quarterback play. Because they had Danny Canal, who started 10 games. He was 3-7. Kent Graham started 6 games. He was 5-1. But I mean, and then it had Mike Cherry. He played in 1 game too. But Danny Canal completed 53% of his passes. Kent Graham completed 51% of his passes. The Giants had 18 touchdown passes and 15 interceptions. On defense, they gave up only 17 touchdown passes, but they had 19 interceptions. So I mean, the defense once again was very, very good. Their running game averaged 4 yards a carry. They only had 10 rushing touchdowns all season long, so they did not score a lot of touchdowns. Good old Gary Brown. I remember him. He had 1,063 yards. He had 5 rushing touchdowns for the Giants, averaged 4.3 yards a carry. Charles Way. I love Charles Way. Fortunately, I think his knees started going, and he only played, I think, 1 more season for the Giants, but he had 432 yards for the Giants. Good old Tiki Barber. They didn't quite figure out yet that this guy might be pretty good, because he only had 160. He only ran the ball 52 times for 166 yards. But he did have 42 receptions. So he almost had as many receptions as he did carries. So 42 receptions. So those were, and then they had Tyrone Wheatley. And I think this was Tyrone Wheatley's maybe last season. Was the next season? I think he was with the Raiders in 1999. Let me see here. Yeah, he was 99. Yeah. So this is Tyrone Wheatley's last season. He was the Giants' first round selection in 1995. They took Tyrone Wheatley. He played 4 seasons for him, and his final season with the Giants, he carried the ball. He was a first round selection, first round running back. They gave him the ball 14 times for 52 yards. The following season, when he was with Oakland, he had 936 yards rushing. The following season with Oakland, he had over 1,000 yards rushing. So the Giants had some good running backs on the team. I mean, with Gary Brown, Charles Way, Tiki Barber, right? And Tyrone Wheatley. So they had some good running backs. Let's see here. And then, of course, and they're passing. Let's see. Ike Hilliard, right? He had 51 receptions. Let's see where we at. Where's Amani Toomer? Right? He had 27 receptions. And Chris Callaway led the team with 62 receptions. He also had 812 receiving yards, and he had 6 touchdowns too. Amani Toomer had 27 catches, but he had 5 touchdowns. And of course, the big one was the game winner against the Broncos. So there was some talent there. There was some talent there. Let's see. Tiki Barber had 42 receptions. Charles Way had 31 as a fullback. Gary Brown had 13 receptions. Howard Cross had 13. Dave Patton had 11. Joe Jurevicius had 9. Their second round selection had 9 receptions for the whole season. I mean, just not very good. I mean, as I said, they needed quarterback play, and it said that they would get it in 1999, but 98 was not very good. Brad Dalwiso, he kicked 21 out of 27 field goals. Not too bad. Brad Maynard had a very good year punting. He averaged 45.2 yards a punt. The Giants' sacks, they did very good at 54 sacks. They only gave up 35, but Michael Strahan had 15 sacks himself, so he really started to come into his own. Not only that, but the Giants had Chad Bradsky. He had 11 sacks this season. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, I don't know if because Chad Bradsky got drafted by George Young, and of course he didn't want him. So after, I guess, his contract was up, they didn't re-sign him. Because the following year, Chad Bradsky went to the Colts and he had 12 sacks, I think it was. So he had back-to-back double-digit sacks. He was very good, but the Giants didn't keep him. So, but I mean, I said the defense was very good. A lot of sacks. Michael Strahan started coming to his own. Let's see, where's the hammer at? Keith Hamilton had 7 sacks, right? Tito Wooten, man, they must have been blitzing him. He had 3 sacks. Jesse Armstead had 5. So I mean, they had a good defense. They had a good defense. It's just that the offense had some good players, but once again, they needed good quarterback play, which they did not have. So let's go over their games here, shall we? Now they started off the season. They won the first game at home against the Redskins, 31-24. So now the Giants started off 1-0. Then they would lose the 4 of their next 5 games. And they just lost a bunch of games from here on in until the final 4. So they lost their final. The next one they played in Oakland. They lost 20-17. And Napoleon McCallum, is that what his name was? He ran 80 yards for a touchdown on the first play of the game. Must have been a touchback because Napoleon Kaufman, that's what it was, from Navy, I believe he was. He ran 80 yards for a touchdown on the first play from scrimmage. So they were up. Oakland was up 7-0. The Oakland wound up winning 20-17. It was 17-17 going into the fourth quarter. The Giants couldn't have scored in the fourth quarter. Greg Davis kicked a 26-yard field goal for the Raiders with 2.5 minutes to go in the game, and the Raiders would win 20-17. So I mean, it was a shame because I mean, as that the Giants, these close ones, if they could have just won one of these close games, they might have made the playoffs. The following week, they played the Cowboys at home. They lost 31-7. Let's see here. Then the following week, the Giants played San Diego, the Chargers in San Diego. And I think that was that the Ryan Leaf game? I think it was. because I know the Giants. Yeah, Ryan Leaf. Yeah, he was, man, he was horrible. He was 15 out of 34, 193 yards. He threw 4 interceptions. They were booing the heck out of him, man. Absolutely booing the heck out of him. Then Craig Wheelahan looks like came in. He was 6 out of 15. So the Chargers were 21 out of 49. Wow. But the Giants, I remember this game. The Giants really looked good in there. I said Ryan Leaf absolutely was horrible in that game. Percy Ellsworth picked the pass off 20 yards and ran it back for a touchdown. So one of the Leafs interceptions got run back for a touchdown. So the Giants won. As I said, the Chargers took Ryan Leaf. Wow, what a bust that was. So the Giants won 34-16. So now the Giants are 2-2, right? But then they would want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They would lose 6 of their next 8 games. So pretty much end their season. So the Giants would play in Tampa Bay, and they lost 20-3. Now the Giants are 2-3. So the Giants was 5 times during the season. The Giants scored less than 10 points. They scored single digits 5 times. You're not going to win many football games scoring that many few amount of points. So after the Giants lost to Tampa Bay 20-3, they're 2-3 now. Then they played the Falcons came and played the Giants. Now let's not forget the Falcons were a good team because the Falcons went to the Super Bowl in 1998. So the Giants lost at home to the Falcons 34-20. Now the Giants are 2-4. The following week, the Giants, the Cardinals wound up ahead of the Giants in the division. They wound up 9-7, and they went to the playoffs. But the Giants were able to beat the Cardinals. The Giants beat the Cardinals at home in Week 7, 34-7. And now the Giants are 3-4. But then the Giants would lose their next 3 games to go to 3-7. The Giants went on the road to play against the Redskins, and they lost that one 21-14. So then the Giants dropped to 3-5. Yeah, I mean, this one wasn't. I mean, the Giants were down 21-7, and they scored a touchdown in the third quarter, make it 21-14. Nobody scored in the fourth quarter. Dave Patton returned a kickoff 90 yards for a touchdown for the Giants. So the Giants' offense in this game was not very good at all. The Giants had 10 first downs in this game. I mean, 229 total yards of offense. I mean, it's once again, it was just, not very good. Not very good at all, right? All right, so now the Giants are 3-5. Then the Giants went on the road and they played the Cowboys. They lost once again 16-6. Once again, single-digit points they scored. Not going to win any football games, I guess. And now the Giants are 3-6. The following week they hosted the Packers. My God, Brett Favre-Nugan went off. Right. The Giants lost 37-3 to the Packers. Now the Giants are 3-7. Once again, 3 points they scored. The following week, the Giants hosted the Eagles, and they would win 20-0. I'm sorry. So now the Giants are 4-7. The following week, they went to play the 49ers. They went on the road, played the 49ers. They lost 31-7. 49ers were a good team once again, but once again, the Giants scored single-digit points. Not going to win any games like that. So now the Giants, after they got smoked by the 49ers, they were 4-8. 4-8, 4 games left to go. The only thing they had to play for was for pride and possibly not having a losing season by winning the final 4 games, which is what they did. The week 14, which was to be the Giants' 13th game, they went to 5-8 when they beat the Cardinals in Arizona, 23-19. As I said, they were able to beat the Cardinals, who wound up with a better record and who wound up going to the playoffs. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to move my legs here. My dog's in the way. There we go. Okay. All right. So then the Giants are 5-8, which set up the battle at Giant Stadium. 5-8 New York Giants against the 13-0 Denver Broncos. And the Giants would wind up winning 20-16. It was a very exciting game. The Giants Kent Graham hit Amani Toomer on a 37-yard touchdown pass with 57 seconds left to go in the game, which made it important because the Giants went up by 4 points. They went up 20-16. Broncos got the ball, and they started, of course, they only had 57 seconds left to go, but with John Elway throwing the ball, they had a very, very good team. They started marching down the field, and they got, I guess, I don't remember if they got in field goal range or it was close to field goal range or whatever, but they needed a touchdown. So they had to, keep throwing the ball deep. And I believe, I don't remember if the clock ran out or if the Giants stopped them on fourth down or whatever it was, but it was just very, very an exciting game. I actually remember watching that one. It was a, heck of a game. So, so now the Giants are 6-8. They had 2 games left. They played the Kansas City Chiefs at home, and they would win 28-7. Beat the Chiefs. Now, once again, remember, the Kansas City Chiefs have never beaten the Giants they never played the Giants in New York, actually. So they can't say they never beat the Giants in New York because they never played the Giants in New York. However, they've never beaten the Giants in New Jersey. And then the final game of the season, the Giants went on the road and they played the Eagles. So, excuse me. So if the Giants were to win, they would avoid a losing season, and they would win 20-10. They pulled it out. So just got to show you, when things aren't going all that well, this, that, and the other thing. The Jim Fossil, he had a way. He was. I guess he could get angry at times and all, but he seemed like more like of a player's coach. He was a real nice guy, a player's coach, but they would rally around them, at times, and they would have, they would do some marvelous things. No better point in hand than the 2000 season. They just had a phenomenal season. That won the championship game 41-0. Just overachieved. Absolutely overachieved. It was a fantastic season, but this is the 1998 season. So the Giants wound up 8-8. So let's go to the NFL here. And what does Wikipedia have to say about the 1998 season? The 1998 NFL season was the 79th regular season in the history of the National Football League. The season culminated with the Super Bowl, with the Denver Broncos defeating Atlanta Falcons 34-19 at Pro Player Stadium in Miami. The Broncos had won their first 13 games, the best start since the undefeated 72 Dolphins, and were tipped by some to have a realistic chance at winning all 19 games. Yeah. Well, the Minnesota Vikings became the first team since the 1968 Baltimore Colts to win all but one of their regular season games and not win the Super Bowl. Because the Colts lost one game. They lost to the Browns in 1968, and then they went to the Super Bowl, and they lost to the Jets. So, the Vikings were 15-1, and because Gary Anderson missed a field goal, he choked in the championship game. He missed a field goal, would have sent the Vikings to the Super Bowl, but he choked and missed. His only miss all season between field goals and extra points, he missed one all season long, and it was one that could have sent the Vikings to the Super Bowl. But after no team had won 14 regular season games since the 1992 49ers, 3 teams went 14 or 2 better for the only time in a 16-game schedule. Football Outsiders argued that 1998 was the last hurrah for the great quarterbacks who came into the league in the 80s. The top 4 quarterbacks statistically were all over 35. Vinny Testaverde, Randall Cunningham, Steve Young, and John Elway, and Troy Aikman. And Troy Aikman at age 32 was 5th. Dan Marino was 11th in his last good year. So there was a bunch of quarterbacks, really good, obviously good quarterbacks, that were coming to an end. Their time was coming to an end, right? As I said, Elway, Steve Young, Dan Marino, phenomenal quarterbacks. But let's go over the AFC. What they mentioned there, okay, was that this is the first time ever that there was 3 teams that were 14-2. I'm not sure if they meant 14-2 or had at least 14 wins. 3 teams had at least 14 wins. The Broncos went up 14-2. The Broncos wound up losing another game in the final two games. They wound up losing. I think they lost their following week as well. So they were 13-0. I think they went to 13-2 before they won their final game. But the Broncos were 14-2. The Minnesota Vikings were 15-1. The Minnesota Vikings, I mean, they had Randy Moss. They could put up some points. They scored 556 points. They could put up some points, let me tell you what. And the Atlanta Falcons were 14-2. Right? So the Falcons were a very, very good team. So there was three teams who won 14 games. I mean, you don't see that very often. But anyway, once it's something else you don't see very often. The AFC East, there were five teams. Four of them went to the playoffs. The Jets won with a record of 12-4. This was, of course, Bill Parcells' coach team. And he would take them to the championship game where they would wind up losing. But they were 12-4. Bill Parcells took the Jets there. They were 12-4. I think in 1996, I think the Jets were won one game. They were 1-15. And here it is 2 years later with a different coach. They were 12-4 and went to the championship game. So just goes to show you how important coaching is. But the Jets won the AFC East with a record of 12-4. The Dolphins, Bills, and Patriots. The Dolphins were 10-6. Bills were 10-6. The Patriots were 9-7. All three of those teams went to the wild cards. Jacksonville and Tom Coughlin, right? They were 11-5. They won the AFC Central, and the AFC West was won by, of course, the Denver Broncos with a record of 14-2. So in the playoffs, all right, let's see here. In the first game, Jacksonville at home beat New England 25-10. Miami would beat Buffalo 24-17, sending those two teams to the divisional round. In the divisional round, the Jets would beat Jacksonville and Tom Coughlin 34-24. And Denver would whoop up on Miami 38-3, setting the Jets and the Broncos up in the AFC Championship game. Now, the Jets were winning 10-9 at halftime. They didn't score any points in the second half. The Broncos would score 2 touchdowns and win 23-10. I was really pulling for the Jets in this game big time because of Bill Parcells. But he took this was his third team he took to a championship game. He took the Giants to 2 championship games and 2 Super Bowls. He took the Patriots to a championship game and a Super Bowl. And he took the Jets to a championship game. So he's a third different team he took to a championship game. Absolutely freaking incredible. What a coach he was. What a coach. So in the NFC, right? In the NFC East, the Cowboys won with a record of 10-6. The Arizona Cardinals got the wild card with a record of 9-7. Now remember, the Giants were 8-8. The Giants missed the wild card by 1 game. Probably would not have, even if they got in the wild card. I mean, between the Vikings and the Falcons, and even the 49ers were really good at 12-4. I mean, chances are the Giants were not going to get to a Super Bowl, So, but in the NFC Central, the Vikings won, obviously, with a record of 15-1. The Packers came in second with a record of 11-5. Then the NFC West, the Atlanta Falcons won with a record of 14-2, and the San Francisco 49ers came in second place with a record of 12-4. So in the playoffs, the 49ers, this was a real good game. Really, really good game. Steve Young versus Brett Favre. What a game this was. The 49ers won 30-27. Very exciting. Very exciting. Then in Texas Stadium, the Cardinals went into Texas Stadium and beat the Cowboys 20-7. So now in the divisional round, Atlanta hosted the 49ers and they won 20-18. And then Minnesota beat the Cardinals 41-21, setting up the championship game between Minnesota and Atlanta, which Atlanta wound up winning in overtime. But Gary Anderson missed a field goal, I think, right at the end of the fourth quarter, which would have wound up winning the game for Minnesota, sending them to a Super Bowl. But he missed it. It went into overtime, and Atlanta would wind up winning 30-27. So, which winds up setting up the Super Bowl between the Atlanta Falcons and the Denver Broncos. And it was not much of a Super Bowl, just to be honest with you. At one point in time, the what was it, 31-6? 31-6 at one time. Yeah, with 11 minutes to go in the game, Elway had a 3-yard touchdown run. put the Broncos up 31-6. So Atlanta actually had the lead. They were up 3-0 early on. Morton Anderson, who kicked them that game-winning field goal against the Vikings in the championship game. He kicked the 32-yard field goal early in the first quarter, put Atlanta up 3-0. But then it was pretty much kind of like all the Falcons, all the Broncos after that. Howard Griffith had a 1-yard touchdown run for the Broncos, make it 7-3. Jason Elam kicked a 26-yard field goal to make it 10-3. Rod Smith had an 80-yard touchdown reception from John Elway to make it 17-3. Then just before halftime, Morton Anderson kicked a 28-yard field goal to make it 17-6 at halftime. There was no scoring in the third quarter. Then Griffith once again had a 1-yard touchdown run, and the Broncos went up 24-6. John Elway had a 3-yard touchdown run with 11 minutes to go in the game. So with 11 minutes to go in the game, it was 31-6. So, 31-6, what is that? 25 points. So that's 4 scores. So not happening. Atlanta did well, actually, I guess put a little bit of doubt in the finality of the game, because after Elway's 3-yard touchdown run and Jason Elam kicked the extra point, it was 31-6. Well, the ensuing kickoff, Tim Dwight ran it back 94 yards for a touchdown. Morton Anderson's extra point made it 31-13. So now with 11 minutes to go, they're still bound by 3 scores. But made it 31-13. But then 4 minutes later, Jason Elam kicked a 37-yard field goal. So the Broncos got the ball, marched into field goal range. Jason Elam kicked the 37-yard field goal to make it 34-13, putting it up by now they're up by 3 touchdowns, right? 21 points. Well, with 2 minutes to go in the game, Terrence Mathis had a 3-yard touchdown reception from Chris Chandler. They tried a 2-point conversion. It was no good. So instead of it being 34-21, the final score went up 34-19. The Broncos, what they had? They had over 400 yards. They had 457 yards of offense. Falcons had 337, but what hurt the Falcons was they had 4 turnovers. The Broncos had 1, but the Falcons had 4 turnovers. So, the Broncos were a phenomenal team. The only team that I could see could possibly rivaling them would have been maybe the Vikings, because the Vikings had such a good offense. The Falcons had a very good offense as well too. But let me see here. What was in the regular season here? I know the Vikings had what? The Vikings scored 556 points. They scored the most. The Falcons scored 442. So the next best team was the Broncos. The Broncos scored 501 points. So the Vikings scored 55 more points than the Broncos did. So the Vikings scored 55. So it was almost 3 or 4 more points per game than the Broncos did. So if the Vikings got there with their offensive firepower, it might have been a little bit of different of an outcome. Not saying the Vikings would have won, but it might have been a little bit closer of a game, because in this game you could just tell that Atlanta was outmatched. Denver seemed like they were on a mission. They were clearly the better team in this game, and they wound up winning. And as I said, it wound up being very nice for John Elway, because 1986, 87, and 89, he got smoked. 86, the Giants in the Super Bowl. 87, the Redskins beat him. And 89, the 49ers just, what a horrible game that one was. So he got demolished 3 times in the 80s. Well, 1997, they 31-24, they beat the Packers, and then in his final game ever, they beat the Atlanta Falcons and in the Super Bowl. And John Elway got on his horse and just rode off into the sunset. Not one time Super Bowl, but back to back Super Bowl champion. So very, very happy for him. The Giants, for what they had, 8-8 was not bad. They just did not. They had a decent defense, as you saw. They held the Denver Broncos. They were at home. The Giants, held them to 16 points. So the Giants did have a decent defense, But just what was apparent was they needed a good quarterback. And Ernie, of course, he would take care of that the following season when it would get Kerry Collins in there. So better times were ahead for the Giants. Not the 1999 season, but better times were ahead for the Giants. So that pretty much wraps up the 1998 season for the Giants. I said I'll be back again tomorrow with the 1999 season for the Giants, which just happened to be the 75th season in the history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.